Hi there, I'm Dean Heskin. You're tuned into our podcast entitled The Secret War on Cash, brought to you by Swiss America. I have with me and you, my co-host, Chris Agelastos, with all of us. Chris, good morning. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Thanks for being here, and thanks for being with us. It is, let's see, we're going to be real close here to an election. The finish line draweth nigh. Good news is we will no longer have to see relentless political ads, get relentless text and phone calls. And hopefully the better news is the outcome of the election is favorable, to the tune of having someone in the office, the White House, the Oval Office, who is dead set, hell-bent, whatever you want to say, on getting the economy on the mend, getting the markets going, and all those great things. But that said, we are now also right on the verge of just literally, not going to say moments away, but close to moments away, to the BRICS summit, where we now have this alliance, or what I think we've called the not a revolution. What is it? They're calling it an alliance, but it's become more of a movement, actually.
Yeah.
We have this movement of nations that is banding together in hopes of strengthening their countries, their currencies, their economies domestically, but doing so on a united front. Part of the reason being, and it's, it's easy to be critical of what's been happening with this BRICS alliance, because what they are doing is basically in the vein of anti-US. However, they really couldn't do what they're doing if they were still tied to the US. So it kind of creates, an interesting dynamic. And they've been, what started off as being, well, this is interesting. Now it's become a movement. It has become a movement. And so they have the summit, and this is, the headline of this article here, Chris, which I know you've looked at: Russia discusses BRIC currency before 2024 summit. And for those of you who are tuned into this podcast and have been for any amount of time, we've covered this a lot. And in so doing, when the topic of BRICS currency came up, one of the fundamental or cornerstone aspects of it was the fact that it was going to be a currency that was going to be backed by gold. In fact, it was just a few weeks ago where we covered this, where they were talking it would be 40% backed by gold, and the remainder of which was going to be backed by the various currencies of the participating nations. Okay, does that all sound correct, Chris?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Well, here's the deal. In this article, and they're now talking about how they're taking the gold backing off the table for now, and are still going to look to launch a BRICS currency, which is reflective of the relative strength or the collective strength, I should say, of each of the participating nations. Now, some might say, okay, this is good. Putin and those guys were blowing smoke. They don't have a gold-backed currency. That could be valid. But what I wonder when I saw this, I'm like, okay, hold the phone here. Because of, you look at the strength of BRICS, which we'll get into in the next article, one aspect of that, but natural resources alone, the participating nations of BRICS control like 70% of the world's natural resources.
Yeah, it's a high number.
Very high number. And so my concern when I saw this is like, okay, this is the first little chink in the armor for BRICS and what they're lobbying or pushing for. But then I started thinking about, well, wait a minute. Are they maybe doing this because they're not in a position as of yet at this point to launch a gold-backed currency for whatever complexities that might bring? And I would imagine part of that is, look, when you have a gold-backed currency, you have to have accounting for that gold. You have to have storage for that gold. There is some framework that needs to be put in place. Yeah. And part of the reason that framework could be a little suspended or delayed is because, and this is me just speculating here, Chris, and you and I haven't had a chance to talk about this yet, but is part of the reason this is being delayed, they are adding countries so quickly. It's difficult to, kind of put that network of that gold backing together. But my point is this, ultimately, do they so desperately see the need to get an anti-dollar currency that they're willing to forego that aspect of it for the time being? Because they say this is still a priority. They want to back it by gold, but they just want a currency out on the table. Are they this committed to their de-dollarization efforts that they're willing to launch this, even though it's not exactly what they drafted up originally? They feel this will be a better alternative than the other, meaning a dollar-denominated world economy, et cetera.
Yeah, I have the feeling that, and again, this is speculation, so it's hard to say, but I have a feeling that what they really want to do is do it properly. And if they really want to end the reliance on the U.S. dollar for BRICS nations, which they come out and say regularly, they want to do it gradually and they want to do it properly. And if they go about it a little bit too early when everything isn't in place, they've got a higher chance of failure, or other nations not wanting to join and adopt this practice. So this doesn't really make me feel any better that they're not launching the gold-backed currency right now, because they have a lot of power, they have a lot of resources, they're continuing to gather resources, which I know we'll be talking about here. And so I think they're honestly just maybe planning it properly and trying to do it right the first time. Selfishly, I hope that's not the case. But I don't really take this announcement that they're not releasing the gold-backed currency right now as necessarily a positive thing.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, again, it was off the top of my head, Chris, I think it's the first kind of reversal of point or concept that we've seen. But there again, they're not saying we're abandoning this altogether. They are just saying, all that's really changed is, we're going to do this first and then that second,
right?
Rather than that first and this second type deal.
It's been pedal to the metal, really, right? And now they just pumped the brakes for a second. It doesn't mean they stopped or turned around, and again, that to me that means that they're putting some serious thought into this, and that they want to launch when it's really ready, instead of forcing the issue and maybe risking that it doesn't accomplish what they want.
Well, exactly right. And that's where the second article, I know we've kept everybody listening on the edge of their seats.
Suspenseful.
Very suspenseful. Trying to shake it up a little bit here. The title of this next one, BRICS. So in the vein of this, okay, we're not going to back, our currency initially with gold, but that's the title of this next article. BRICS control 20% of the world's gold reserves. Mm-hmm. So here's the point. Even though they're not perhaps or per se going to back their currency initially with gold, doesn't change the fact they still control 20% of the world's gold reserves.
Yep.
So the strength is still there.
Mm-hmm.
They just because it's not specifically tied to their currency with the asterisk yet, it doesn't change the fact that they do have natural resources, this gold, et cetera, that they as a entity, as an alliance, as a movement, that they control, that they own. And that's where strength comes from. And it's kind of like, to kind of give a shameless plug of our product, getting into physical gold, physical silver, it's the same exact dynamic. Person has $1 million in their retirement account. They put 100, maybe 200 grand into physical metal, and then $1 million in, let's say, collective other assets. Let's say it's retirement, non-qualified monies through like just a stock portfolio or a wealth manager, or whatever it might be. But that 10 to 20%, that 100 to 200 grand that they have in gold, that's the whole point in having it. It's there. It's there to back everything up. Heaven forbid something bad happens over there. So even though they don't have gold specifically backing their currency. Just the fact they've got it, we'll say, sitting on the shelf for if they need it, that's just as good for the most part. I mean, the only thing beyond that is if they start doing what the United States did, and that is, basically in creating a fiat money, just continue to print, and devalue that currency, which, that's, again, a discussion for another day. But I don't see it, again, where maybe there is a shred of, okay, well, maybe BRICS isn't taking the world by storm as much as we thought by the first article. This second article kind of lends to the fact, well, I don't think anything's really changed. I think they're on the course. They've just kind of changed the game plan slightly.
Yeah, I mean, they're still currently using local currencies for trade, which does hurt the dollar, regardless of whether or not they have this gold-backed currency yet. They specifically state they want to make the U.S. dollar less abundant and less dependable, and they want to elevate their own currencies. They've been, buying massive amounts of gold since 2022. I mean, even prior to that, but I mean, they really ramped up in 2022 around the time that the U.S. Put sanctions on Russia. And the fact that they have that, 20% of the world's gold, I mean, a fifth of the gold out there in reserves, they control. And, when we talk about BRICS, it's multiple nations, but really Russia and China control about 75% of that 20%. So them alone, that's basically about 15% of the world's gold just controlled by Russia and China. So when countries like India, who a few weeks ago came out and said, hey, we don't really have anything overtly against the dollar, even though they're part of BRICS. Well, the two nations that control 75% of those precious metal resources do have something against the U.S. and the U.S. dollar. So they still have a lot of power, a lot of strength, and I think they're just being a little bit more pragmatic about it and planning things out. And I don't think we should just take it for granted and not worry about them. I think we need to pay attention to this story, continue to follow it, and just keep a cautious eye and do what we can in the meantime just to protect ourselves, which as individuals is to obviously diversify and make sure that if we continue to have major problems, with the dollar or in the banking system in our country, that, even though we may all be affected to some degree, do what you can to minimize the impact. It doesn't mean you'll be left completely unscathed, but by diversifying and having money in different places, your metals, your real estate, cash, obviously the markets, stock market, and whatnot, you've got the best chance of being able to get through any sort of catastrophe.
Sure. Well, there is a lot of unknown with this. I mean, we discussed recently how, North America has now gotten into the mix of BRICS with Cuba, which Cuba, in the grand scheme of things, is, probably not going to inherently change things all that dramatically or move the needle that much. But I will tell you what's going to be interesting to see is like when European nations start weighing in on this a little more, albeit by way of either participation or by shunning it. But that could really be a major factor, a major game changer, in terms of what would I say, like a radically shifted dynamic there.
Right.
And that's something, we haven't heard much about, but I got to tell you, again, with Cuba weighing in recently, and then, with now the fact that Europe's going through their own share and set of struggles out there. And let's be honest, like the U.S. dollar and the dominance there has been the same thing for their economy for the most part, is what it has to all these other nations who are just saying, look, we need to kind of fight for our own here at this point. So be interesting to watch. Interesting to watch. Well, thank you. Thanks for those of you who are tuning in. And if you're not subscribed to this podcast, please do so. Contact our office to get some free information on metals, the secret war in cash or anything else that may be of interest in terms of portfolio or asset diversification, you can do so at 1-800-289-2646 or visit us online at SwissAmerica.com. Thanks so much, Chris. Thanks for all the input, and we will continue to watch this. For those of you tuning in, have a great rest of your week.
Take care.